Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a road full of signs. Each of these signs represents a choice, a direction you can take in life. But suddenly you find yourself stuck, unable to move forward. A weight in your chest. A restlessness you can't explain. Sound familiar? Carl Jung, one of the great thinkers of the past century, believed that this feeling of being stuck, often experienced as anxiety or neurosis, isn't an enemy, but rather a message. It's as if your own body is trying to tell you something. You need to change direction. And here's the central question. What do we do when that message arrives? Most of us try to ignore it, pretend everything is fine. But the more we sweep it under the rug, the bigger it grows. And this is what Jung wanted us to understand. Anxiety is actually an opportunity. It's the beginning of a journey to discover who we truly are and where we should be headed. Have you ever thought that maybe your anxiety is trying to help you? Maybe it's the push you need to step off the sidelines and take control of your life. Let's explore this idea together today. The meaning of neurosis, a signal for change. Think of neurosis as the fire alarm of the mind. When something is wrong, it goes off. Not because your mind wants to punish you, but because it's warning you. Something needs to change. Carl Jung believed that neurosis is not a personal failure or a problem rooted in the distant past. In fact, it is screaming at you to look at the present. The discomfort you feel? It's the sign that the path you are on right now is not leading you where it should. It's like trying to force the wrong piece into a puzzle. You might push, twist, try to adapt it, but it will never fit the way it should. And as you try, you feel that growing frustration. Neurosis is that feeling. It arises when, at some level, we know we are living in a way that doesn't align with who we are or what we need. Jung saw this as an opportunity for transformation. Instead of just silencing the alarm, what happens if we decide to listen? And more importantly, change. It might seem scary, and it is, because change means stepping out of the comfort zone, confronting what we've been avoiding. But without it, the alarm never goes away. The big question is, will you keep trying to ignore the sound, or are you willing to understand what it wants to say? Now, imagine you're standing in front of a mirror. But it's not just any mirror. This mirror reflects everything, not just your appearance. It shows your flaws, insecurities, fears, and all those parts of yourself that you'd rather hide. Most of us tend to look away. Who wants to face what makes us uncomfortable, right? Carl Jung believed that the first key to overcoming anxiety or any neurosis lies exactly there, in the courage to look into that mirror without turning away. This process is what he called self-acceptance. And what does that mean? Self-acceptance is not just about liking yourself. It goes far beyond that. It means recognizing who you are, with everything that comes along, the strengths, but also the dark parts. It's understanding that your imperfections are not burdens to be hidden, but essential aspects of who you are. When you accept your flaws, you stop wasting so much energy trying to cover them up. And that is liberating. Think for a moment about how much effort we put into disguising our imperfections. We pretend everything's fine, we deny our fears, we blame others when things go wrong, and in the end, all of that only pushes us further away from ourselves. Jung asks us a difficult question. What if you stopped trying to be perfect? What would happen if you simply accepted your mistakes, your limitations, as parts of who you are? The relief that comes from this process can be compared to letting go of a weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. He even suggested something challenging. Ask someone you trust to describe who you really are. Imagining from someone else, hearing from without filters, the truth about yourself. It could be painful, but it's also one of the fastest ways to see yourself honestly. Jung believed that when we stop fighting against ourselves, we begin to release energy for what really matters, our growth. Have you ever wondered how much energy you waste trying to hide your flaws? And what could you accomplish with that energy if it were directed towards something positive? Self-acceptance is the first step because it allows us to breathe. It lets us stop pretending, and finally, it gives us the chance to connect with who we really are. And from that point of honesty, true change can begin. Imagine you're running from something, maybe a fierce dog, maybe a storm. At first, you run fast, feeling the relief of escaping, but soon you realize that the more you run, the closer what you're trying to avoid seems to get. This is how avoidance works when it comes to anxiety. In the beginning, it feels like you're in control. But over time, what you're avoiding ends up controlling you. Carl Jung warned about the dangers of this behavior. When we avoid what causes us discomfort, we're actually building a prison around ourselves. Think about it. When you avoid a situation because it provokes anxiety, the immediate feeling is one of relief. Phew, dodged that one. But what happens the next time something similar comes up? The tendency is to avoid it again. And again. Slowly, your life begins to shrink. The opportunities for growth, the challenges that could have made you stronger, all of that gets pushed aside. It's as if, by avoiding discomfort, you're building invisible walls around yourself. At first, these walls seem distant, almost imperceptible. But over time, they start closing in until you find yourself trapped in a tiny space, unable to explore life as it truly is. Jung used a powerful metaphor to describe this. He compared those who avoid their fears to people sitting in a peaceful valley, unaware that a raging bull is charging toward them. The longer you sit there, the closer the bull gets, and when it finally stands right in front of you, there's nowhere left to run. That's the trap of avoidance. The more we avoid, the stronger the problem becomes. But here's the central point. Anxiety doesn't go away because you ignore it. On the contrary, it feeds off this escape. Every time you choose the easy way out, avoiding the situation that makes you uncomfortable, you reinforce the power it has over you. The cost? A life that becomes increasingly limited, where fear dictates your choices. Jung encourages us to do the opposite, face what scares us. Because, contrary to what we think, the real suffering isn't in facing it, it's in the running. Every time we choose avoidance, we're giving more power to fear and taking away our own chance to grow. So the question is, how long will you let fear surround you? Are you willing to keep running, or will you stop, look the bull in the eyes, and say, enough? Now, imagine you are climbing a mountain. At first, the climb feels smooth, almost pleasant. But as you progress, the path becomes steeper, harder, more demanding. Your muscles ache, your breathing grows heavy, and with each step it becomes more tempting to give up and turn back. But up there at the top, if there's something you can't see yet, something only those who persist are able to reach. For Carl Jung, neurosis is like this climb. At first, it may seem like only pain, confusion, and a strong desire to quit. But what if, instead of seeing neurosis as an obstacle, you could view it as an opportunity? An opportunity for growth, a life's invitation for you to become stronger, more resilient, more whole. Jung believed that neurosis, this psychological pain many of us try to avoid at all costs, can be a true blessing, but only if we have the courage to face it. It's not a punishment, it's a call. A signal that the path we're on isn't leading us to our highest potential. Think about the people you admire. Those who have gone through great hardships, who have faced immense challenges, and somehow emerged stronger on the other side. They aren't admirable because they never suffered. On the contrary, they are admirable precisely because they went through the pain, confronted their demons, and grew from it. Jung said that those who face their neurosis and turn it into growth develop an inner strength that those who have never experienced this kind of suffering can't reach. Of course, this doesn't mean the path to recovery is easy. Jung compared this process to climbing a steep mountain trail, while those who avoid their neuroses are comfortably sitting at the base, unaware of the danger approaching. Yes, the climb is difficult, but it's also liberating. Because once at the top, you discover something you could never have found in the valley. A new perspective, a new sense of who you are, and what you are capable of achieving. Neurosis, then, is a choice. You can see it as a curse, something that holds you back, limits you, or you can see it as an opportunity. A crucial moment in your life when you can choose. Continue on your current path with all the suffering it brings, or face the climb. Hard, yes, but one that leads to a much richer and more meaningful life. So the question is, will you keep avoiding the challenge, or will you accept that behind this pain lies a chance to become someone you don't even know you can be yet? Imagine you're sitting in the stands of a football game. You watch the players on the field, running, pushing themselves, striving for victory. From a distance, it's easy to criticize, suggest what could be done better, or even think that you would do things differently. But the truth is simple. You're not in the game. And as long as you remain seated in the stands, nothing in your life will change. Carl Jung believed that to overcome neurosis and anxiety, we must get out of the stands. It's not enough to just observe life, hoping that somehow everything will resolve itself. True recovery comes through action. You need to stand up, enter the field, and start playing, even if you're unsure of the perfect next step. And the most important thing? Jung reminds us that there is no perfect step. It's common to want to know exactly what to do to feel better. What's the ideal path? What's the magic formula? But the reality is that waiting for the perfect solution is just another way to avoid action. The path to recovery, according to Jung, doesn't depend on a formula, but on a decision. The decision to act, to do something, anything, that takes you out of the spectator's seat and puts you at the center of your own life. Jung warned of the dangers of conformity. Sometimes we're so busy trying to live up to what others expect of us, so concerned with fitting into what society deems normal, that we lose ourselves in the process. Anxiety grows precisely because we stop following our own path. Recovery begins when you give yourself permission to be who you are, without worrying so much about other people's expectations. So what's the next step? It doesn't matter if it's big or small. What matters is that you break free from paralysis. Maybe it's something simple, like starting a new hobby, facing a difficult conversation, or making a decision you've been postponing for months. Whatever it is, movement is what counts. Because as Jung taught us, staying still, waiting for answers, only prolongs the suffering. The question that remains is, are you ready to leave the stands and step onto the field? Imagine that you are standing at a crossroads. Every way you look, there's a different path. Some seem familiar, while others are completely unknown. The anxiety you feel is paralyzing. The fear of choosing the wrong path keeps you there, stuck without moving. But that is where the real danger lies, doing nothing. Carl Jung believed that when we are trapped in our neurosis, the important thing is not to choose the perfect path, but to choose some path. Any movement toward the future is better than stagnation. Because while we are stuck in our doubts, in our what-ifs, time passes and life slips away. Choosing a new path is like reigniting a flame within yourself. It doesn't have to be a grand decision, something that will change the world immediately. It can be something small that moves you out of the bubble of anxious thoughts and reconnects you with the world around you. A new goal, a new activity, or even a new way of thinking, all of these can be the beginning of a different journey. Jung also suggested an interesting exercise. Imagine your life without this anxiety, without the fear of social judgment. Who would you be? What would you do? Allow yourself to dream without limitations. Sometimes the answer to our path lies precisely in our fantasies, in our deepest desires, which we avoid confronting for fear of failing or being ridiculed. The fact is that any action that takes you out of the internal cycle of thoughts is already a victory. The world out there may be uncertain, but that is where true life happens. You can remain standing at the crossroads, tormented by possibilities that never materialize. Or you can begin to walk, accepting that mistakes are part of the process, but that the true failure is not moving. So the question is, What is the first step you can take today, right now? Because, in the end, it is movement, not perfection, that will lead you to a new path. Now, think of something that scares you deeply. It doesn't have to be a great phobia. It can be that subtle yet persistent feeling that stops you from acting. It might be the fear of failure, of being judged, or of not being good enough. Now imagine living with that fear every day, like a shadow that follows you wherever you go. For many, this is the reality of anxiety. Carl Jung offers us a powerful insight. Fear is not something we need to eliminate before moving forward. On the contrary, fear is the companion of any meaningful journey. It will be there, walking alongside you. What makes the difference is not waiting for fear to disappear, but learning to move forward even with it present. Often, we think that we can only start living fully when fear is gone. But this is a myth that traps us. It's like waiting for the sea to be completely calm before setting sail. The truth is that the waters are rarely perfect, and the boat only moves when we decide to navigate, even in choppy seas. Jung believed that the path to recovery is not made up of grand, fearless steps, but rather small, courageous movements made despite fear. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Because true growth does not happen in the absence of discomfort, but in the act of facing that discomfort head-on. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that before starting something, whether it's a new project, a career change, or even a difficult conversation, you need to be free from anxiety. But the truth is, if you wait for fear to pass, you may end up waiting forever. Fear, in Jung's view, is often a sign that we are on the right path. It's the discomfort that arises when we are stepping out of our comfort zone and approaching something that truly matters. So how do you move forward? There's no magic formula or advice that will make fear disappear once and for all. But there's a simple truth. The act of moving, of taking initiative, is what breaks the cycle. Every small step you take diminishes fear's power over you. With each movement, you discover that you are more capable than you imagined. Ask yourself, what is the smallest step you can take today, even with fear by your side? Perhaps it's starting that task you've been avoiding, making that call that causes you anxiety, or simply stepping outside and facing the world. The important thing is not the grandeur of the gesture, but the fact that you are acting, not paralyzed by fear. In the end, fear doesn't have to be your enemy. It can be an indicator that something important lies ahead. And the big question is, will you continue waiting for it to disappear? Or will you learn to walk with it, knowing that a full and meaningful life happens despite fear? So, think about everything we've discussed so far. Anxiety, neurosis, fear, all these challenges that, at first glance, seem to pull you down, are actually opportunities. Carl Jung showed us that what causes us pain can also be the key to our transformation. The feared neurosis is a call to action, a reminder that you are ready for something greater. The truth is that no one goes through this life without facing moments of discomfort, but what defines who we are is not what haunts us, but how we choose to respond to it. You can continue to run away, to avoid, to let fear dictate your choices. Or you can choose to face the journey, with all its ups and downs. The most amazing thing is that this choice is in your hands. Yes, the climb is steep, the path is uncertain, but what you will find at the top could be a version of yourself you never imagined possible. Because it is by facing anxiety and walking despite fear that you discover your true strength. And now the final question. Will you remain still, letting life pass you by, or will you accept the invitation for transformation and move forward, even if it's one step at a time? The path is before you. What will you do next? If you enjoyed this content and feel that it has helped you reflect on your own journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss the upcoming videos that can help you understand more about your mind, and your path to transformation. Leave a comment sharing your experience. What are you facing? What are your next steps? Let's continue this conversation and support each other on this journey. And of course, like the video so that more people can find this content and benefit as well. See you in the next video.